Today's episode is brought to you by Infinity Kingdom. Vassago, the third demon to appear in the Ars Goetia, adopts a form that is quite similar to the previous entry in Agares. Both of these demons control legions in hell. Both appear to use a crocodile as their mounts, and both are ranked high enough to be considered demonic nobility. But in the case of Vassago, it might be argued that his prominence in the hierarchy would eventually overshadow Agares, who was only a duke. And whilst Agares enjoys a certain influence over his realm, Vassago was still royalty, given that he was a prince. The implication here is that because of his royal heritage, Vassago would outrank Agares, but conversely, a prince doesn't always necessarily outrank a duke. In the old French kingdom, for example, the duke was situated above the prince, and it might be argued that depending on the duke's age and experience in comparison to the prince, he would be seen with a higher authority. Furthermore, in the case of Agares and Vassago, Agares controls 31 legions of spirits, whilst Vassago only controls 26, showing us that Agares' sphere of influence was much larger. Before we get started on today's episode, a brief message from the sponsor of today's video, Infinity Kingdom. Infinity Kingdom is an MMO strategy game with a unique cartoony style, where players can summon famous figures from history and legend in an effort to fight against the evil invading gnomes. Take part in sieges covering hundreds of cities, and expand your kingdom in the ultimate strategic contest to control the world heart. With Infinity Kingdom, I've really enjoyed discovering and unlocking the vast amount of characters, or immortals as they're known, from the likes of Helen of Troy, Lancelot, Pierre Terrell, Brynhild, Peleo, and literally hundreds more. The animation style used in the game is really outstanding, and it's always fun anticipating which legend from history you'll unlock next. The game is already jam-packed with some interesting ideas, from rebuilding your kingdom, upgrading your troops and barracks, establishing the economy through farming and sailing, and of course the epic battles you'll find yourselves in against the wicked gnome army. But to add to this, Infinity Kingdom also incorporated dragons into the mix. Dragons can be unlocked as you progress through the campaign. Just head on over to the dragon cave and wait for your egg to hatch. Dragons can be upgraded and used in battle as great range supports. Like the immortals, each dragon has a different elemental ability that will help give players an edge in battle. If you'd like to give Infinity Kingdom a try, the game is available to play for free on both mobile and desktop. Just use the link in the description box below. Another interesting tidbit to mention is that Vassago is one of the only demons who is not mentioned by John Weyer in his Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, or by Colin de Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal. This might also indicate the relevance and importance of Vassago in comparison to Agares, in that both authors chose to omit him from their own classifications. But luckily for us, the Lesser Key of Solomon gives us something to work with, and tells us specifically, Vassago, the third spirit, is a mighty prince, being of the same nature as Agares. He is called Vassago. This spirit is of a good nature, and his office is to declare things past and to come, and to discover all things hid or lost. And he governeth 26 legions of spirits, and this is his seal. Once more we see right off the bat that Vassago is a mighty prince of hell, and that he is described as being of the same nature as Agares. Now automatically, we'd likely assume that being the same nature as Agares would mean the subject was evil. Agares, after all, was considered to be a spirit that taught men forbidden aspects of language, could destroy dignities, and most shockingly, cause earthquakes. But we also understand that Agares was of the order of the virtues, and as discussed in the last episode, could imply that there was once something righteous and good about Agares. Even in this passage of Vassago, we see Vassago described as a spirit of good nature, and because he has the same nature as Agares, it's reasonable to believe that both, at least at some point, were not insidious or wicked. As per his illustration in the Lesser Key of Solomon, Vassago also bears much of the same visage as Agares, in that both are old men, and both ride upon a crocodile. Not much else, however, can be deemed from this similarity, other than speculation that the original author intended to show both demons as kindred in some fashion. You might also notice the one difference, in that Vassago does not have a goshawk for company, but instead carries with him an hourglass. It's hard to reconcile how this might fit into his character or role within the demonic world, but it might be said that the hourglass was merely symbolic and reflective of his duty for declaring things of past and future. Indeed, as we can see from the text, Vassago's main responsibility also differs from Agares, in that he is responsible for declaring things that have both passed and have yet to come. This may have been of particular benefit to soothsayers and fortune tellers, who according to occultist beliefs, would summon entities like Vassago to aid them in their readings. The text also reveals that Vassago assisted people in finding their lost or stolen objects, yet another service that was redeemable upon summoning him. Interestingly, there does not appear to be anything that Vassago asks for in return for his summoning. There is no mention of sacrifice, bargaining, or requirement of fealty, and going by his description as being of a good nature, it might be said that Vassago was just simply willing to help. Perhaps in this, Vassago is merely guilty by association, and because he is a high-ranking demon, despite his pleasant and utilitarian approach to humanity, he is still considered an abomination. You might also say that the act of summoning a spirit and conferring with such a spirit is not congruent with mainstream religious beliefs, and for that reason alone, the demon is shunned, despite how helpful he might be in determining the future, recalling forgotten events, or helping one to find their belongings. Whilst there is no mention of Vassago in the usual circles of demonology, such as the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum and the Dictionary Infernal, the Book of Office Spirits, a demonic grimoire that inspired much of the aforementioned works, does speak of Vassago, or as he's known here, Usagu. In this document, he appears as an angel, and that he is just and true in all his doings, perhaps further reinforcing the idea that he was more of a good entity. The Book of the Office Spirits also details some of Usagu's powers, in that he can incite women to love and reveal the location of hidden treasures. You might say that this is where his more surreptitious characteristics come into play, for inciting the love of women certainly has some provocative connotations. His revealing of hidden treasures may also be deemed as deceitful, for it could be argued that he is appealing to man's greed and guiding him off the righteous path in favour of money and riches. Yet the aforementioned statement that he is just and true in all his doings makes this seem less likely, and being an angel, it could probably be trusted that he does these things from an authentically innocent point of view. Vassago's depiction in these accounts do challenge the status quo of what a typical demon, no less a demon prince, should be like. Instead of being monstrous and cunning, he does appear to be more sophisticated and cordial. This is one of the more interesting things about the Lesser Key of Solomon that is often overlooked, for though the demons are visibly striking and possess some fantastical gifts, perhaps more intriguing are their personalities. Categorizing many of the demons, including Vassago, is not such a black and white affair, for there do indeed appear to be many facets that make up the demon's character and behaviour. They aren't simply there to corrupt mankind, as commonly believed, but appear to adopt their own individual goals, whether this be teaching man language, helping them find items, reading their futures, or even inspiring them to love. As we continue with the Lesser Key of Solomon, this will become more apparent, whether this be in the form of a demonic donkey teaching science, a demonic lion curing diseases, or a part wolf, part snake demon that resolves conflicts between friends. But in the meantime, let me know what your thoughts are about the demon Vassago, and as always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.